Okay, so the topic that I'm going to cover today is about path, class path, and jar files in Java. So it is a very important concept. Make sure you understand it well. You have questions, please ask your questions, ask your doubts. Okay, so I have this blog here on my website. If you will go and check on the blogs, click on the blogs, and you will find either on the third or fourth page introduction to path and class path environment variable. So first of all, I'll explain what is class path, and then I'll come to path environment variable. Okay. Now, if you will look at here at this definition, it says the class path variable is one way to tell applications, including the JDK tools, where to look for user classes. The preferred way to specify the class path is by using the -cp command line switch. This allows class path to be set individually for each application without affecting other application. So what is meant by this? Let's say I'll go to my OneNote here, and for example, I have a file A here and I have a file B here, right? Now, suppose in a file, when I say file, I mean class. Okay, in a class A, if I create an instance of B, so what do? I say B equal to new of B. This is what we do, and then we call the methods of that particular class if there are any method inside that. Now, for this to happen successfully, it is necessary that B is in the class path of A. Now, what it means that B should be visible to A. I will try to explain this concept with an example. So, for example, let's say I will open my Eclipse, and I will create a small project here for you. So, I will call it new other, and I will call it Java project. I will create my first project. So, I will call it as core Java 1. Okay, so once I do this, I will come to this screen. Herein I will go inside the source folder. I have a, which one I created, okay, whatever it is. So let's say I have this core Java 1 created here. Here I have my first program. So I will delete this, and I will also delete this for the timing. So I have a program with two simple classes, my first program and my second program, right? Now what I'm going to do is, in my first program, let's say I create a main method. Okay, now inside the main method, okay, before even I okay, let me go back to my second program, and here I'll create one method here, public. So I'll call it public void display. Inside this I'll say sys out of this, I'll say this class name slash. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to go to my first program, and I'm going to create instance of this class here. That's what we have been doing, right? I mean, this is something which we already know of, but anyway, so let's do this. And then I say my second program dot display. So I think so this is not a big deal, and we are already aware of this. Let's run the program and let's look at the output here. So I get my output as, right, and which is coming from this class. Now one thing important to note here is that it was possible, what was possible, I was able to create instance of this class, my second program, in my first program, or instance of B, as I was showing here in the diagram. I was able to create the instance of B in class A. Why? Because B is in the class path of A. What it means is, if you will go to Eclipse, okay, I am again back to my Eclipse, and if I say Control Shift R here, there is a file called class path. If you will look at this file here, you will see that it specifically states that class path entry is bin, right? Now what does it mean? It means that for this project of mine, which is core java 1, there is a file called there are class file which are in this directory called bin. So I'm specifically telling this project that please find the class files in bin folder. Where is bin folder? If you right click on this, if you go to properties, if you go to build path, if you go to source, can you see this? I had explained this earlier also, that there is this folder core bin which you can change according to your requirement, wherein all the classes will be created. So if I want to go to that folder, I'll click on resources here, I'll click on this arrow sign, so it will open a Windows Explorer here like this for me. If you go inside here, there is a bin folder which contains com, c2t and the class files. So I am specifically mentioning in my Eclipse with the help of this .class file that the location of class path is bin, and because I am saying that that is a class path entry, therefore one file is able to access another class file. That is how the class path concept works in this particular case. Is there any questions I can take so far? Now I'll go a step further, and I will try to create one more. So this is a project, right? Single project. I will create one more project here, new. I will call it core java 2. So I'll call it core java 2. Okay, so I have the project here again, core java 2. Right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file here, file in project 2. I'll call it, or let's call it core java file from core java 2 project, right? So I believe this will help us understand that where is this file coming from. Inside this, what I'm going to do is I'm creating a public method here, public void method. Okay, public void method, and I will say sys out here, sys out. Okay, and inside that I'll say method, right? This is just to distinguish that it is actually coming from, that's why it is coming from this file, therefore I'm putting the file in here as well. Now these are two different projects, right? So in the first case, when I was working here, when we were in the same project, how do I specify the location of the classes? By using a class path class path file, right? And in this I specify that all the classes are in this bin folder, and therefore it is able to pick those files and everything works fine. Now what do I do if there is a situation like this wherein I have a project one? So initially they were in the same project, for example, they are in the same project. Now the situation is different. There is a project one here, there is, so let's say I have a project uh, one here and I have a project two here, project 1 and project 2. Okay, now how do I include the files which are in project 2 into the project 1? So let me explain that to you. There is something called a jar file in java. What is jar file? Jar file, for example, we know what is a zip file, right? So zip file is a collection of some documents and other things. Similarly, in the world of Java or in the Java programming, you can bundle together class files in a file called jar file. So there is again one more blog I have written on my website. If you want, you can go through that whenever you have time. So demystifying jar file. Let's try to understand jar file. Now, Java jar stands for Java Archive File Format, enables you to bundle multiple files in a single archive. Archive is like a zip file which we normally use in day-to-day life. Typically, a jar file contains class files and associated metadata and resources into one file to distribute application software or libraries on the Java platform. Now, when you have 10, 20, 100, thousands of files, you don't want to share the files as an individual class files, right? You might want to zip it and send it. It is easy to maintain, and it is easy to use. Now what I'm going to do is, I mean, you can read more of this from this blog. What I'm going to show to you now is how I can convert one project class files into jar file, and how do we use it into another file. Make sure you understand that the reason is same concept we are going to use in Selenium. We'll use the existing jar files provided by Selenium, include them in our project, and that's how we are going to use it. Okay, so let's get started. So I'll come back here in my project. Okay, now there are few basic commands you need to know. I mean, it's okay if you don't know, but just remember. So if you want to create a jar file, this is the command: jar cf name of the jar file and the files which you want to include in the your jar. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to this project. So what I'm my purpose or my intention is that the files which are in core java 2 I'm going to include in core java 1. So how do I do that? I'll go to the location on my Windows Explorer. So it is here. I'll go to bin folder. Okay, so it's not in any package, so let's do one thing. I will create one more file, uh, and I'll put it in one package so that it makes more sense. So I'll put AAG. Yes. Okay, so we have already started. Okay, so I'll call it, to make it simpler, file 1. To avoid the confusion, I'll make it file 1. I'll finish it. Okay, so, and again I'll put com dots c2 t dot p1. Okay, and I'll move that file into the correct folder, so we have this error removed. So I have this file here, right? And I'll call it m1 method 1. Now I'll create one more file. Okay, so this I should have named it to file 1. So I'll call it file 1. Okay, I'll copy and paste it. I'll create a file 2, and in this I'll create a method which is method 2, right? So I have a project, a core java 2, which is, let's say, project p2. Inside that I have two files, and I go into this directory and I see that structure com c2t and then p1, right? So this is the structure I have. Now I go to command prompt via this. So it will bring up a window like this, command window. Now I have to type this command here, which I just showed to you, jar cf. So I'll say jar. If you don't know what is jar, say jar, hit enter. So it shows you how you can use jar. So C is to create a new archive file. F is the specify the name of the file. Okay, so I will say cls clear jar cf, create a file. Which file I want to create? um, uh, what is the name of that project we were using? Where is my eclipse? So it is core java 2, right? So I'll call it core java 2 dot jar. And what I want to include in that, dot means current directory. Current directory means that whatever is inside this folder bin, all of that will get included in jar file. Okay, so I will hit enter here, and let's see what happens. Let's go back and see. So there is a core java 2 jar file. Okay, now let me unzip it or extract it and show what has gone inside this. So just 1 minute. So if you will go here, I'll create a temporary folder here, tmp. Okay, I'll paste the jar file. So if you want to see what has gone inside this, you can right click on the file and you can open with 7-zip or any other unzip utility you have. It starts to extract it. Just okay, so it has unzipped. Okay, not this one, sorry. 1 second, right click, open with 7-zip. What's happening? Okay, extract to this, I'll click here. So you will see whatever was inside there from C2T, P1, all those files have come here, right? Now for the time being, please don't worry about meta INF. That could be a part of different discussion. But for now, our focus is that how do we use the jars in another or class files in another project into my current project. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is now in this, so I have already created a jar file for core Java 2. Now what I want to do is that I want to include those files in my project, this project here. So what I will do as a good practice, I will create a folder here and I'll call that jar files, or you can call it lib also, whatever you want. It is a name you can give by your choice. Okay, I will go here, I will copy that jar file and I'll put it in that folder lib here. Okay, now please be careful and pay attention as to what I am doing. I'll now, before I do that, let me close any other project, close unrelated project. So only this file is open, or this project is open for me, core Java 1. Here I will open the .classpath file. Once I open it, I still see that only this is there currently in the class path entry. Fine. Now I'll right click on this. I'll right click on the project. I'll go to properties. I'll go to Java build path, and then I will go to add jars. Here in the tab libraries, I'll go to add jars. I will expand this. I will go to the lib folder and I'll include this jar and I'll say OK. Okay, and then I'll say apply and then I'll say OK. So if you will see that .class path has got updated with the entry of jar file, it means that that jar file is now in the class path of my project which I am going to use, which I am using in the current project, right? Now what I can do is in that file, do you remember what all jar files were there? So if I want to see, or rather what all class file were there, there was file 1 and file 2. Now I want to use those file 1 and file 2 here. So let me close this project. I'll come to this my first program. Now I can say import import com dot c2t dot p1 dot file 1 file 1. Now why is this possible? I am able to import that file into this current project or current file of mine. Why? Because I have included the jar file, and that jar file is in my class path of this project, and therefore I can do this import. Now I can create instance of this file, file 1 equal to new of file, and then I can simply call dot what was that method, method 1 here, right? And I can call the method. If this file .jar file was not in the class path of my project, so how do we do this? Let's remove this entry. You will see that I cannot use that file, or I cannot import that file. So the summarization is that if I have to use a file, or rather a class file which is in jar file, I have to include that jar file in the class path of my project. Clear? Okay, so I hope this concept is clear to you all. What is the purpose of class path, and what is a jar file, and how do we include that a jar file in our project. Now in continuation of what we have, so I'll add this again to my class path by saying Ctrl Z, and then the error will be gone. So this is class path. So coming back to the definition again here, if you will see in this blog of mine, the class path, now it will make more sense if you read this. The class path variable is one way to tell applications including the JDK tools where to look for user classes, right? So by class path, I say that my class file is in so and so location. Please take that class file from that location and compile my code, right? So we are done with class path. Next is, what is path environment variable? Now before we understand path environment variable, let's understand what is an environment variable. An environment variable is a dynamic object on a computer that stores a value which in turn can be refreshed by one or more software programs in Windows. So what it means is, let me again go to my OneNote and explain that with a diagram to you. So let's say I have a package here. I'll call it pack 1, and I have another package here, pack 2, right? Now suppose there is a file sitting here, file 1, and there is a file 2 here, right? Now if file 1 wants to use file 2, and if they are in different packages, I cannot do that, right? So for example, I'll take an example of uh, Java installation. So if I go to this directory, which is C users Naresh, in this directory I execute a command which is Java. It says Java is not recognized as internal or external command. Now what it means? It means that in this current directory, which is C users Naresh, I do not have this file here. But if I go to the location where my Java is installed, so I will go here. So this is where my Java is installed. D and choice here, Java apps. Sorry, not Java apps. Where is my here Java in 64-bit? If I go to this inside bin, there is a Java. Can you see Java? Here it is, right? So if I go to this directory here, if I execute a command called Java, so let's say I execute a command called Java. Okay, here if I enter Java, it will execute, it will give an output, meaning that it is finding this command Java in this directory. Why? Because I'm in that directory where Java is sitting. Okay, now the problem is that not always I can switch to that directory to execute my Java command, right? If I want to execute that command from here, which is C users Naresh, what I will have to do is I'll have to copy this whole path. So this whole path is basically, I'll have to copy this, yeah, and then I'll say slash Java, and if I hit enter, it still works fine, right? Why? Because I am specifying in the location where the Java file is, and therefore it will run perfectly fine. But the problem with this is that it is not always convenient for me to type this entire path of the location of Java. So a better approach is to use environment variable. What is an environment variable? Environment variable is a dynamic object on computer that stores a value which in turn can be refreshed by one or more software program. So there is an environment variable called path. Okay, I'll tell you how to set the path. So okay, so as I was talking about path as an environment variable, um, so path specifies the directories in which executable programs are located on machine that can be started without knowing and typing the whole path to the file on the command line. Okay, so what it means that Java was my executable, and because I don't want to type the whole path of Java every time to run my program, I will specify that whole path in my path environment variable. How do we do that? You go to your computer, so right click on this PC or computer, go to properties. It will bring up advanced system setting. Click on this. It will bring up a dialog box like this. Okay, go to environment variables, and then here in the system variable you can set it in the user variable also and system variable also. User variable path is only specifically for user Naresh. You can have multiple users in the machine, right? So what I will do, I'll set it here in the system variable. If I set it here, then it will be available to all the users. You can edit it, and you will see here I have already set this is the location of my Java, this first one. uh, okay, this is one location where I have my Java. So once I set this and I say okay, and I say okay, and if I now open a new command prompt after setting that value, so let me exit this, and let me open new command prompt. Okay, so this is the new command prompt which I have opened. Here if I now say Java, and if I hit enter, I will get that the exe or the Java command executed from here. Why? Because it first looks for the command in this directory C users Naresh. If it cannot find it here, it will look for environment variable path, and in the environment variable I have specified the path of my command Java, and therefore it will execute that command from that directory, and that is how it works. Okay, so that's pretty much about a path environment variable and why do we set the path environment variable.